Get that boy out of the water. This pool closed 52 minutes ago. Ethan Walker's rescue whistle slipped from his fingers and struck the wet tile with a sharp metallic crack. Beneath the cold blue lights, he stood at the pool's edge holding an orange rescue buoy, while 10-year-old Noah Brooks clutched a green kickboard in the shallow lane. Behind them, the round clock hung above a crooked closed sign. In the upper corner, a security camera blinked red. I was almost floating, Noah whispered. 3 hours earlier, the community pool had carried the tired stillness of late summer. Chlorine hung in the warm air. Water ticked softly through the floor drains, and the fluorescent fixtures buzzed above rows of empty plastic chairs. Ethan moved through his closing routine in a faded light blue polo, worn khaki pants, and work shoes darkened by years of chemical splashes. He checked each gate twice, tested the emergency phone, counted the rescue buoys, and wrote the final filter pressure in the service log with the same careful block letters he used every evening. His key ring clicked against his belt as he crossed the deck. Near lane 3, one green kickboard remained on the tiles. Beside it lay a damp exercise card marked Lesson 4, signed by the swim specialist. Noah stood beyond the glass doors with his swim bag against his chest. The other children had already left in noisy groups, towels around their shoulders, parents calling after them from the parking lot. Noah had no group. He watched the water through the glass as if it had rejected him personally. "Your mom coming?" Ethan asked after opening the door. Noah nodded. "She's late from work." His eyes stayed on the empty lane. "They said class is over for the summer." Ethan looked at the card. The final exercise was simple on paper. Controlled breathing, face in the water, release the wall, float for 3 seconds. Noah had completed every step except the last. "Did the instructor tell you to practice this?" Ethan asked. Noah held up the card with both hands. "She said I could do it if I stopped getting scared." The words were ordinary, but the shame behind them was not. Ethan knew what it meant to watch. Other people move forward while you remained fixed in place. He also knew what it cost a child to decide that needing more time made him undeserving of it. Ethan called Noah's mother from the pool's landline. At 7:04, she answered between the sounds of traffic and an apologetic supervisor in the background. Ethan explained the exercise, the shallow depth, and the extra hour. She gave permission and promised to arrive before 8:15. He recorded the call in the service log, opened the gate at 7:11, switched on only the lights above the shallow lane, and placed the orange rescue buoy within reach. "No race," he told Noah. "No audience. We stop whenever you say stop." Noah entered by the steps. For 40 minutes, nothing miraculous happened. He breathed too fast. He gripped the wall. Twice he climbed out and sat shivering beneath a towel, embarrassed by his own fear. Ethan never called him brave and never told him fear was foolish. He simply reset the kickboard, checked the water, and said, "Again only means again. It doesn't mean failure." At 8:03, Noah released one hand, then the other. His body stiffened, sank an inch, and rose again. Ethan stayed beside the edge, one hand near the buoy, counting quietly. 1, 2. The service door slammed open. Victor Haynes entered with his phone already raised, his expression controlled and professionally disappointed. He filmed the clock, the closed sign, and the open gate. He did not turn the camera toward the signed exercise card on the chair. "This is an unauthorized private lesson," Victor said. "A misuse of community property and a serious child safety exposure." Noah swallowed water and began coughing. Ethan immediately turned away from Victor, guided him to the steps, and wrapped a towel around his shoulders. "Look at me," Ethan said. "Not them. Breathe out slowly." Victor demanded the keys. Ethan removed the ring and placed it on the counter without protest, but he kept his body between Noah and the adults gathering near the gate. "You can take my keys," he said quietly, "but don't turn a child learning to float into proof that he wasn't worth helping." For the first time, Victor's phone lowered half an inch. Then his polite mask returned. He instructed the evening technician to prepare an incident report and classify the security recording as routine footage with no preservation requirement. Above them, the camera continued blinking. On the technician's monitor, the file carried a small automatic label Victor had not noticed. Ownership transfer review, Claire Bennett. By 8 the next morning, the security file still sat under Claire Bennett's transfer review label, but Victor Haynes had already printed 3 copies of his incident report and placed them neatly across the front counter. The pool smelled of chlorine, wet concrete, and stale coffee. Fluorescent light flattened every face in the room as Ethan stood in his faded blue polo beside the lost and found bin. His work shoes leaving dark prints on the tile. Sign here. I need to read it. It's only an acknowledgement. Victor's voice remained soft, almost considerate. Behind him, 2 board members studied Ethan's frayed collar and grease-marked knuckles with the careful discomfort people reserved for someone they had already decided not to trust. The report described an unauthorized private lesson, excessive utility use, missing parental consent, and suspected personal payment. Ethan read each line without rushing. His thumb paused over the phrase financial benefit. There was no payment, he said. Victor folded his hands. Mr. Walker, no one is accusing you of greed. We're simply documenting the appearance of impropriety. The sentence sounded merciful. That made it sharper. Near the glass entrance, Noah stood beside his mother with his damp swim bag pressed against his chest. He had brought the lesson 4 card, but sometime during the night he had drawn a single pencil line through his own name. Victor gestured toward a second form. We'll also need a brief statement from the child. Nothing stressful. Just confirmation that Mr. Walker invited him into the facility after hours. Noah's fingers tightened around the card. Ethan moved before the boy could answer. He did not raise his voice. He simply placed one hand over the paper and slid it back across the counter. He's 10. We understand that. Then, speak to his mother. The hum of the lights filled the pause. Water moved faintly behind the glass, blue and empty beneath the lane ropes. Victor's smile narrowed without disappearing. This is precisely why procedure matters. Adults sometimes make emotional decisions and leave others to absorb the consequences. One of the board members glanced at Noah, then away. Ethan saw the boy lower his head as though the consequences had a name and it was his. Put my name on the decision, Ethan said. Leave his off it. Victor tapped the report with a silver pen. Your name is already on it. Printer word behind the desk. Another page slid out, warm and faintly curled. Noah's mother reached for it first, then froze. It was an email confirming that Noah had been removed from the remainder of the swim program for failure to meet minimum progression standards. He had 1 lesson left, she said. Victor softened his tone. I'm sorry. We have to consider the experience of the whole group. Sometimes continuing is not the kindest option. Noah stared at the floor. With the eraser end of his pencil, he rubbed at his name until the paper began to tear. Ethan crouched beside him, careful not to touch the card without permission. You didn't fail the water, he said quietly. The schedule ended before you were ready. Noah swallowed. If I don't come back, you won't get in more trouble. Ethan's jaw tightened once, then released. He took a strip of clear tape from the counter, pressed the torn edge of the card flat, and repaired it with the same patience he used on cracked filter seals. This isn't yours to carry, he said. Across the room, Victor collected the forms into a clean stack. He explained that Ethan would be suspended without access to the property pending ownership review. He requested the rescue whistle, the key ring, and Ethan's employee badge. Ethan placed each item on the counter one at a time. The orange whistle rolled in a small circle before settling beside the incident report. No one noticed that his service log remained open beneath the forms, the entry from the previous night visible in block letters. Parent contacted, 7:04 p.m. No fee. Lesson 4 only. On Claire Bennett's laptop miles away, the same report appeared polished and complete. At first glance, it looked routine. Then she opened the attached financial record and found no receipt, no cash entry, no transfer, and no charge connected to Ethan or Noah. She read Victor's accusation again, slower this time. Suspected personal payment. Her eyes moved to the timestamp on Noah's removal email. It had been issued before Ethan finished reading his suspension notice. Claire did not call Ethan. She did not assume he was innocent. She simply clicked back to the transfer view folder and noticed one missing attachment Victor's report claimed should have been there. The call history proving no parent had given permission. Claire Bennett stared at the missing call history attachment for nearly a full minute before closing the file. She did not call Ethan. She did not call Victor. Instead, she marked the document for preservation and wrote one question in the margin of her legal pad. If no parent consent existed, why was the field left blank instead of marked denied? Across town, Ethan Walker found Noah sitting alone on the bench beside the community center bus stop. The late summer sun had turned the metal shelter warm, and the air smelled of cut grass, hot pavement, and chlorine still trapped in the boy's damp swim bag. Noah held the Lesson 4 card between both hands. The clear tape Ethan had used that morning was already peeling at one corner. His own name remained crossed out in gray pencil. "Your mom knows you're here?" Ethan asked. Noah nodded toward the grocery store across the street. "She's finishing her shift. She said I could wait where she can see me through the window." Ethan sat at the opposite end of the bench, leaving enough space that the boy would not feel cornered. For a while, neither of them spoke. A city bus sighed at the curb, opened its doors, then pulled away without them. Ethan took the card only after Noah handed it over. He smoothed it against his knee, peeled back the loose tape, and replaced it with a fresh strip from the small repair roll he kept in his pocket. Then he used the side of his thumb to rub away the pencil line through. Noah's name. "Victor said I slow everyone down," Noah murmured. "He said the program has to be fair." Ethan studied the worn card. The swim specialist's signature had bled slightly where pool water touched the ink. "Fair doesn't always mean everyone gets the same number of minutes," he said. "Sometimes it means nobody gets left alone with the part they're afraid of." Noah looked at him. "Are you still fired?" "Suspended. Is that better?" Ethan gave the smallest smile. "Not by much." A woman crossed the parking lot quickly, still wearing a grocery store vest over her blouse. Noah's mother carried a white envelope in one hand. Her face was tired, embarrassed, and determined. "Mr. Walker, please," she said. "For the electricity, or the water, whatever they say you cost." Ethan did not open the envelope. He placed it back into her hand and folded her fingers around it. "Use it for Noah's next appointment." "But you lost work because of us." "No," Ethan said. "I lost work because adults decided the cleanest story was more important than the complete one." He stood before she could argue and returned the repaired card to Noah. The boy held it carefully by the dry edges. From the grocery store window, a cashier watched Ethan walk away with the same expression people often gave men in work clothes carrying problems they could not afford. By 4 that afternoon, Lily Walker was waiting in Ethan's old pickup outside her elementary school. Her backpack wedged between her knees and a paper bag of crackers open in her lap. Ethan had picked her up late enough that the crossing guard was gone. "Did they take your whistle?" she asked. "Yes." "Your keys too?" "Yes." Lily considered this, then broke her last cracker in half and placed one piece in the cup holder beside him. "You can have the bigger half." Ethan looked at it, then at her. The gesture was small enough to break something open inside him. Since his wife's death, he had measured life in quiet trades. Rent before new shoes, overtime before dinner, repairs before rest. He had promised Lily that hardship would never teach them to become hard. "Thanks, kiddo," he said. Before driving home, Ethan stopped at the pool to return a pair of work gloves left in his truck. His badge no longer opened the front door, so he entered through the service vestibule while the morning technician signed him in. From behind the wall came a low, uneven vibration. Ethan stopped. The main filter housing was shuddering against its mount, a metal-on-metal tremor too soft for anyone at the counter to hear. He crouched beside the pipe, felt the vibration through 2 fingers, and shut down the auxiliary feed before the seal could split. Then he tied a red maintenance tag to the valve and wrote the time, pressure reading, and warning in the service log. Victor appeared in the doorway, jacket over one arm. "You're suspended, Ethan." "I know." Then this isn't your responsibility. Ethan capped the pen. A cracked seal won't care whose responsibility it was. Victor glanced at the tag as if it were another example of Ethan's inability to understand boundaries. This is what gets you into trouble, he said. You keep confusing being useful with being authorized. Ethan closed the logbook and left without answering. Later that evening, Claire opened the newly preserved service records. The line about the filter warning was written in the same careful block letters as the entry from the night before. Parent contacted 7:04 p.m. No fee. Lesson 4 only. Beneath the page, the pressure of Ethan's pen had left a faint duplicate impression on the carbon inspection sheet already time-stamped before Victor's report was filed. And Claire realized his notes had not been added afterward. They had been there all along. By 9 the next morning, Ethan's red warning tag was hanging from the filter valve like evidence against him. Victor Haynes had photographed it, attached the image to a new memo, and described Ethan's return to the service area as continued unauthorized interference following suspension. The words were measured, professional, and almost compassionate. They also made a man preventing equipment damage look like someone who could not respect boundaries. Claire Bennett read the memo twice before driving to the pool without announcing her visit. The morning air inside the building was cool and chemical sharp. Chlorine stung the back of her throat, fluorescent tubes buzzed above the empty lanes, and somewhere behind the tiled wall the repaired filter settled into a steady mechanical hum. Victor met her beside the front counter in a charcoal suit, carrying a folder arranged with colored tabs. Ethan stood several feet away in his faded blue polo because Claire had asked him to explain the maintenance entry in person. His employee badge was gone. Without the whistle and keys at his belt, he looked less like a staff member than a man who had wandered into a meeting where everyone else had already decided what he was worth. He entered after suspension. The seal was failing. That is not the issue. 3 sentences, clean and quick. Victor opened the folder and placed the incident report beneath the hard white light. The paper smelled faintly of fresh toner. A highlighted line stated that the pool had remained open for 173 minutes beyond closing, causing unnecessary utility use and prolonged exposure to liability. Claire turned to Ethan. Did you remain here for nearly 3 hours? No. Did you use another entrance? Only the main gate. Victor gave a patient sigh. The electronic lock is old. It does not always synchronize correctly, and the service entrance can be opened manually. Mr. Walker knows the building better than anyone. It was a reasonable explanation. Claire knew aging facilities produced unreliable data, and Ethan's detailed notes could still have been written after the fact by a man trying to protect his job. Quiet people were not automatically honest. Worn clothes were not proof of character. She had no intention of mistaking sympathy for investigation. The technician brought up the access log on a dusty monitor behind the counter. Green numbers appeared against a gray screen. Gate reopened at 7:11 p.m. Gate secured at 8:11 p.m. 1 hour. No second entry. No service door event. Victor leaned toward the screen. Delayed synchronization, he said. The system sometimes collapses multiple events into one. Claire did not argue. She asked for the utility report. The printer clicked and dragged out a page showing only a modest rise in electricity during the same hour. Victor explained that water circulation and chemical load would not appear in that figure. Again, the answer was plausible. Ethan remained still, his hands loose at his sides, until Claire placed the electronic log beside Victor's report. Then he asked one question. If I was here for 173 minutes, what time does the report say I left? The room slowed. Victor looked down. His report listed 9:56 p.m. Claire turned the access log toward the light. And when did the closing technician arm the building alarm? The technician swallowed. 8:23. A cart wheel squeaked in the hallway and stopped. Sunlight from the glass doors stretched across the counter, illuminating the faint pressure marks beneath Ethan's service log page. The handwritten sequence was precise. Parent contacted at 7:04, gate opened at 7:11, shallow lane lights only, gate secured at 8:11. Victor tapped the folder once. He could have reconstructed those times later from the system. Ethan did not defend himself. He simply lifted the carbon inspection sheet Claire had already noticed and placed it beneath the top page. Under the angled light, the indentation of his writing crossed both sheets. The lower form bore a timestamp from before Victor filed the incident report. Claire's eyes paused on the duplicate impression. Victor moved to close the folder. We are spending a great deal of time on clerical inconsistencies when the central fact remains unchanged. He opened a closed facility for one child. Noah, Claire said. Victor blinked. Excuse me? The child's name is Noah. Victor's hand remained on the folder. Of course. But he had referred to the boy only as the minor in every report, including the email that removed him from the program. Claire said nothing more. She instructed the technician to copy the lock records, utility data, service log, and all camera files onto an independent drive. Victor's expression stayed calm, but he stepped between the technician and the monitor for half a second before moving aside. There may be gaps, he said. The cameras reboot when the voltage fluctuates. You should know that before drawing conclusions. No one had mentioned missing footage. Ethan looked toward the dark camera dome above the shallow lane. The technician began the transfer, and a progress bar crept across the screen. At 71%, a yellow warning appeared beside the file from the night Noah was in the water. 8 minutes of footage were missing, and the gap began less than a minute after Ethan opened the gate. The yellow warning remained on the monitor while the transfer bar finished crawling toward 100%. 8 minutes missing. Victor Haynes folded his arms and gave the kind of sigh meant to sound patient. There it is, he said. An incomplete record. We should be careful not to turn a system failure into a conspiracy. Claire Bennett did not answer. She asked the technician to preserve the original file, the reboot log, and the electrical report before anyone touched the system again. Then she closed the meeting and scheduled a private skills review for Noah the following afternoon. It was not a favor to Ethan. It was a test. If Noah's Lesson 4 card was genuine, an independent swim specialist should be able to verify the exercise without Ethan coaching him. If it was not, then the missing footage would only deepen the suspicion around him. The next day, the pool felt colder than usual. Rain tapped against the high windows, and the covered bleachers smelled faintly of damp canvas and chlorine. Noah stood at the shallow steps in a navy swim shirt, rubbing his thumb over the repaired edge of his exercise card. Ethan waited outside the chain-link divider because his suspension still barred him from the deck. He had returned only to collect a small toolbox from the maintenance room. Claire stood beside the independent specialist, a woman named Dana Mercer, who checked the card under the overhead light. Lesson 4. Controlled breathing. 3-second float. Dana's voice was calm and exact. Victor stood near the timing clock with his hands clasped behind his back. We should avoid confusing this child further, he said. The program already determined he was not progressing safely. Noah heard him. His shoulders rose toward his ears. Dana asked him to enter the water. He did, one step at a time, keeping both hands on the rail. The pool was quiet enough that every small sound carried. The ripple around his knees, the click of Claire's pen, the low churn of the filter behind the wall. Noah reached the practice mark and placed his hands on the ledge. Whenever you're ready, Dana said. He inhaled, exhaled, lowered his face. Then a sharp whistle sounded from the soccer field outside, piercing through the glass. Noah jerked upright. His heel slipped, and his breathing turned shallow and fast. Victor took one step forward. That's enough. We've seen the issue. Ethan did not enter the deck. He did not call Noah's name loudly or challenge Victor. From behind the divider, he raised 2 fingers where Noah could see them. In for 2, out for 4. The same small rhythm they had practiced beside the shallow lane. Noah looked toward him. Ethan tapped 2 fingers against his own chest, then lowered his hand. No speech, no performance, just a reminder. Noah copied the breath. Once, twice. The tightness in his shoulders eased. Dana waited without touching him. On the 3rd try, he placed his face in the water, released one hand, then the other. His body stiffened, dipped, and rose. 1 second. 2. 3. He reached for the ledge exactly where the exercise card instructed. The scrape of Victor's shoe against the tile stopped. Claire lowered her pen. Even the hum of the air system seemed suddenly louder. Dana knelt beside Noah and checked the card again. "This is a standard progression exercise," she said. He performed it within the approved depth and stopped at the correct point. Whoever supervised him before was reinforcing the assigned lesson, not creating a private curriculum. Victor's expression did not change, but the muscles along his jaw tightened. One successful attempt does not erase an after-hours violation. "No," Claire said, "but it does erase your claim that no authorized lesson existed." Victor's voice remained smooth. "Then let's handle the rest internally. There is no benefit in making a child part of an ownership dispute." Ethan stepped closer to the divider, still outside it. He was already made part of it when his name was used to justify removing him. Claire looked at him differently then, not with trust, not yet, but with the first measure of respect. Ethan could have used the moment to embarrass Victor. Instead, he crouched so he was level with Noah through the fence. "You did the whole exercise," he said. Noah gave a small, uncertain smile. "Even after the whistle. Especially after the whistle." Dana signed the bottom of the Lesson 4 card and added the date. Claire asked for the original class roster, the specialist's assignment record, and the system history showing when Noah had been withdrawn. Victor suggested his office could gather those materials later. Claire replied that they would be open now in front of everyone from the archived server. The technician pulled up the record. Noah Brooks, active at 6:31 p.m., withdrawn at 6:42 p.m. Ethan had reopened the gate at 7:11. Claire's hand settled slowly on the folder. Noah had been removed from the program 29 minutes before the act Victor later claimed made him ineligible. Noah had been removed from the program 29 minutes before Ethan reopened the gate. Claire Bennett kept the archived record on the monitor while the technician pulled the access history beside it. The pool lights reflected in the dark glass, turning every face into a faint double. Victor Haynes stood near the timing clock, one hand resting on the back of a plastic chair. "That proves nothing improper," he said. "Administrative status changes happen before final review all the time." His tone was steady, but he called Noah Nathan when he said the name. Ethan noticed. Claire did too. The technician opened the audit trail. Victor's management account had changed Noah's status at 6:42 p.m. The note attached to the action read insurance exposure after repeated failure to progress. Dana Mercer, the independent swim specialist, leaned closer to the screen. "I never recommended removal," she said. Victor turned toward her. "This was an operational decision, not a coaching decision." "Then why cite his progress?" Dana asked. For a moment, only the low churn of the filter moved through the room. Claire asked for the landline records from the night of the incident. The office printer began feeding out a narrow call log, each line appearing in pale gray ink. At 7:04 p.m., a call had gone from the pool desk to the number listed for Noah's mother. Duration, 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Victor adjusted his cuff. A call does not prove consent. Ethan could have answered sharply. He did not. He took the small spiral notebook from his pocket and placed it on the counter, open to the page where he had written the mother's name, the time, and one sentence. "Permission given for Lesson 4 in Shallow Lane until 8:10. "You may check all of it," he said. "Not just this page." Claire looked at him. "Your personal phone too?" Ethan nodded. "Anything that protects the boy from being called a liar." Victor's gaze shifted to the notebook, then to Claire. "This is becoming unnecessarily invasive. We can resolve the personnel matter without dragging a family into it." Ethan closed the notebook gently. "Then remove Noah's name from every report before you use that argument." Claire said nothing, but she sent a message to her attorney requesting a preservation hold on all operational records, employee communications, and sale documents. The utility company's hourly report arrived next. During the extra hour, electricity usage had risen only slightly. Camera footage from the deck showed Ethan switching off 3 banks of lights and leaving only the shallow lane fixtures active. The water circulation data showed no unusual chemical cycle, no party load, no extended operation. Victor said the figures did not include long-term wear. That was true. Claire asked for maintenance costs. Ethan's recent repair invoice appeared on the screen. 1 reused mounting bracket, 1 seal kit, no outside labor. The amount he had saved by repairing the filter exceeded the cost of dozens of extra hours like the one being used against him. Still, Claire did not smile. Savings did not erase unauthorized access. Good character did not automatically prove a scheme. She needed pattern, not impression. The technician searched archived usage files. 3 other children had been marked withdrawn. During the past 2 months, each within days of missing a progress benchmark. Their removals lowered the active enrollment figures used in the property valuation packet. 1 family had appealed. The appeal had never reached the board. Another had requested a modified schedule. The request was listed as incomplete despite a timestamp showing all documents received. Victor's fingers tightened around his phone. Those cases are unrelated. Same facility, Claire said. Same account. Same policy. Same person changing the records. The printer stopped. The sudden silence made the rain against the windows sound louder. Claire opened the sale folder and found an email sent from Victor to a development consultant 3 days before Ethan kept the pool open. Usage numbers are moving in the required direction, it read. We expect an operational violation soon that should settle the remaining objections. Victor exhaled through his nose and reached for the mouse. Claire covered it with her hand before he could close the message. Forecasting risk is part of my job, he said. You are reading intent into ordinary language. It was possible. The sentence was suspicious, but not yet conclusive. Ethan looked at the email, then at the archived records of the other children. Anger moved through him quietly, visible only in the way his thumb pressed against the edge of his notebook. He could have demanded Victor's removal then. He could have accused him in front of Dana, the technician, and Claire. Instead, he asked that the children's names be hidden before any document left the room. They already lost their place in the program, he said. They shouldn't lose their privacy too. Claire's expression changed, not from pity, but from recognition. Ethan was being offered a weapon and choosing not to swing it carelessly. She ordered the sale file frozen, the camera servers duplicated, and the account histories preserved. Then the technician opened the building access report. Victor's key card had entered the pool at 7:43 p.m. on the night of the incident, 17 minutes before the time listed in his official report. He had been there watching through the glass while Ethan stood beside Noah in the shallow lane. And by noon, the community board had been notified that the sale meeting would proceed in public, with the full record placed on the screen. By 6:30 that evening, folding chairs covered the pool deck in rigid rows, their metal legs scraping softly across the damp tile as residents settled beneath the fluorescent lights. The lanes were hidden under a blue safety cover, but chlorine still hung in the air, sharp enough to sting the throat. Above the shallow end, the same round clock faced the room. Beneath it, the closed sign remained bolted to the wall. Ethan Walker entered through the side door with Lily beside him, her small hand wrapped around 2 of his fingers. He wore the faded light blue polo Victor had suspended him in, freshly washed but still marked at one shoulder by a pale chemical stain that would not come out. His rescue whistle, key ring, service log, and Noah's repaired lesson 4 card rested inside a plain cardboard file box. No lawyer walked beside him. No crowd greeted him. A few residents lowered their voices when he passed. One man glanced at Ethan's work shoes and whispered that this had become a lot of drama over one maintenance guy. Ethan heard him. He kept walking. Noah sat in the second row between his mother and Dana Mercer, the independent swim specialist. His card lay flat across his knees, his name visible beneath the place where the pencil line had been erased. Claire Bennett stood near the projection screen at the front, dressed in a dark jacket with no company logo and no visible sign that she now controlled the property. She had ordered the meeting recorded, the children's names hidden from public exhibits, and every digital file loaded from preserved originals. Still, she said nothing when Victor Haynes stepped to the microphone. "This is not a hearing about kindness," he began. "It is a meeting about liability, sustainability, and responsible stewardship." His voice carried evenly through the tiled room. He displayed charts showing falling enrollment, rising insurance premiums, and deferred repairs. Then he placed Ethan's incident photograph on the screen. The open gate, the clock. After closing, the blue-lit water. From that angle, Ethan looked exactly like what Victor claimed. A suspended employee who believed his judgment mattered more than policy. Murmurs moved through the chairs. Victor did not smile. Mr. Walker may have acted with good intentions. Good intentions do not protect a child from injury or a community from litigation. For several seconds, it appeared he had regained the room. Even Claire watched without interruption. Victor then produced a maintenance policy requiring written authorization for any after-hours use. Ethan had no signed after-hours form. The first retention spike landed quietly. The rule was real and Ethan had broken it. A board member asked whether that fact alone justified the suspension. Victor nodded with careful reluctance. "I wish it were otherwise." Ethan's hand rested on the cardboard box. Lily looked up at him, but he did not move. Claire finally asked, "Mr. Walker, do you dispute that the facility was open after hours?" "No." "Do you dispute that the form was missing?" "No." Victor's shoulders loosened almost imperceptibly. Then Claire asked why Ethan had come. He lifted the service log from the box and placed it on the evidence table beside the orange whistle and the key ring taken from him. "Not to prove I was above the rule," he said. "To make sure a child's name isn't used to bury what happened around it." He asked that Noah's face remain covered in any video shown. Victor objected that removing identifying details could weaken the context. Ethan looked at him. Context doesn't require taking a 10-year-old's dignity. The room grew quieter. Claire approved the redaction. She began with the Lesson 4 card, reminding the residents that it had appeared beside the pool in Victor's original photograph. Dana confirmed the signature, lesson code, and approved shallow water exercise. Victor replied that a valid lesson card did not authorize after-hours access. His answer was correct, and several people nodded. Claire then displayed the electronic gate log. Opened at 7:11, secured at 8:11. Beside it appeared Victor's report claiming 173 minutes. Victor explained the old lock. Sometimes collapsed or delayed events. Again plausible. The room shifted back toward him. Then Ethan opened the service log beneath the projection light and placed the carbon inspection sheet behind it. "Would delayed electronics press ink through 2 pages?" he asked. The indentation of the original times appeared under the angled lamp, stamped before Victor's report existed. A chair stopped scraping in the back row. Claire added the landline record from 7:04 and the utility data showing only the shallow lane lights had been used. Victor's voice remained calm. "Parental contact and low electricity do not remove liability." "No," Claire said, "but they remove 3 claims from your report." She displayed Noah's withdrawal record next. Active at 6:31. Removed at 6:42.
Gater reopened at 7:11.
Victor argued that he had changed the status as a preventive insurance measure. Claire asked why he cited the after-hours incident in an action taken 29 minutes before it happened. His hand went to his phone, then stopped. The second retention spike moved through the room like a cold draft. Ethan did not press him. He turned toward Noah instead. The boy held up the repaired card just high enough for Claire to see the signature at the bottom. "That was already mine," he said softly, before the pool opened again. Victor requested a private recess, warning that displaying partial records could create a false public impression. Claire declined. She ordered the access card timeline placed on the screen. Victor had entered the building at 7:43, 17 minutes before the time in his official report. He said he had remained outside the pool to assess the danger before intervening. Ethan looked at the clock, then at him. "For 17 minutes?" Victor met his eyes. Responsible people observe before they act. Claire turned to the technician. "Then let us see what he observed." The lights dimmed. On the projection screen, 2 preserved files appeared side by side. The pool camera with its 8-minute reboot gap, and the hallway camera Victor had never listed in his report. Beneath them waited the restored message log from his company phone. Claire placed her hand beside the keyboard. "Play the hallway file first," she said. The hallway file began with Victor Haynes standing outside the glass doors at 7:43 p.m., 17 minutes before his official report claimed he arrived. On the projection screen, he did not rush toward the water. He did not call for help. He stood beneath the pale corridor lights, watched Ethan beside Noah in the shallow lane, and lifted his phone to photograph the round clock and the closed sign. The room went still. The projector fan hummed. Somewhere beneath the pool cover, water pressed softly against tile. Victor shifted beside the microphone. "Observation is part of responsible supervision," he said, but his voice had gone dry. Claire Bennett raised one hand, and the technician continued the recording. On screen, Ethan checked Noah's Lesson 4 card, placed the orange rescue buoy within reach, and pointed toward the shallow depth marker. He crossed to the wall panel and shut off 3 banks of lights, leaving only the blue fixtures above Noah's lane. At 7:46, Victor looked through the glass again. At 7:51, he photographed the open gate. At 7:56, he typed on his company phone while Ethan remained at the water's edge, counting Noah's breaths. No one in the meeting spoke. The restored message appeared beside the footage, time-stamped 7:56 p.m. "I have the example we need. The closure proposal should go through." Victor's fingers tightened around the microphone. "That message is being stripped of context." Claire nodded once. "Then we will add the context." The screen divided into 4 panels. The electronic gate log showed 7:11 to 8:11. The landline record showed Ethan's 4-minute call to Noah's mother at 7:04. The utility chart showed only the shallow lane lights in use. The archived enrollment file showed Victor's account removing Noah from the program at 6:42, 29 minutes before Ethan reopened the gate. Then Claire displayed the email Victor had sent the development consultant 3 days earlier. "Usage numbers are moving in the required direction. We expect an operational violation soon that should settle the remaining objections." The lie did not collapse with a shout. Collapsed by measurement, time against time, record against record, action against claim. Victor tried once more. The facility was still open without written authorization. "That remains a violation." "Yes," Ethan said from the second row. Every face turned toward him. He stood slowly, but he did not approach the microphone. "I opened the gate without the after-hours form." Victor seized on the admission. "Then the central issue—" "No," Claire said. The word was quiet, but it stopped him. She looked toward the screen where the hallway footage had frozen on Victor watching through the glass. "The central issue is that you claimed an immediate child safety emergency, yet you observed for 17 minutes without intervening. You changed the child's record before the incident. You exaggerated the operating time. You alleged payment without evidence. And while watching a supervised exercise, you sent a message describing it as the example needed to sell this property." Victor's silver pen slipped from his hand and struck the folding table. The small click carried through the room. No one bent to retrieve it. Claire announced that the sale process was suspended effective immediately. Ethan's disciplinary action was rescinded pending final administrative correction. His withheld wages would be restored, and all references to personal payment or unauthorized instruction would be removed from his employment file. Victor's access to management systems was revoked on the spot. The records, consultant communications, and valuation documents would be transferred to an independent auditor and the Community Association's attorney for review of conflicts of interest and manipulated reporting. Victor looked toward the residents who had nodded at his charts minutes earlier. No one met his eyes. His shoulders lowered, not dramatically, but as if the structure holding them had finally lost its support. Claire then ordered Noah's removal reversed and every child withdrawn under the same policy reviewed by an independent specialist. "Their names will not be used in public reports," she said. "Their records will be corrected without turning them into a spectacle." Ethan crossed the aisle and sat. beside Noah before the boy could see his own frightened face replayed again on the screen. Noah held the repaired Lesson 4 card against his chest. "Are you still in trouble?" he whispered. Ethan looked at the orange whistle on the evidence table, then at Lily watching him from the next chair. "Not for telling the truth," he said. Noah let out a breath he seemed to have held for days. Claire switched off the projector. Darkness covered the screen, but the room remained silent long after the evidence disappeared. Then she turned to Ethan and asked what he wanted restored beyond his job, his wages, and his name. Ethan looked at the closed pool, the children's records stacked on the table, and the keys that had once been taken from his hand. Now that the truth had given him a voice powerful enough to change the place, what would he choose to open with it? The folding chairs emptied slowly, their metal legs whispering across the damp tile as residents left the pool deck, without the applause Victor Haynes had once expected from them. Claire Bennett's attorney collected the preserved drives, the altered enrollment records, and the sale documents into separate evidence bags. Victor surrendered his access card at the front counter, then walked out beneath the same round clock he had photographed as proof against Ethan. No one followed him. No one mocked him. The system he had used as a shield would now examine him line by line. Claire remained beside the evidence table until Noah and his mother were escorted to a private office, where his enrollment was restored without cameras, speeches, or a public apology forced from a 10-year-old. The false language was removed from his file. The other withdrawn children were assigned independent reviews. Their names would not appear in the audit report. Ethan watched the door close behind Noah, then began stacking the empty chairs. Claire looked at him. "You don't work tonight." "I know." "Then why are you cleaning up?" Ethan folded one chair and placed it against the wall. "Because somebody will have to do it in the morning." Lily was asleep across 3 seats near the shallow end, her backpack tucked beneath her head and Ethan's old work jacket pulled over her like a blanket. Claire followed his gaze. For the first time that evening, the authority in her face softened into something quieter. "You could ask for compensation beyond the wages," she said. "The association would consider it." Ethan picked up the orange rescue whistle from the evidence table. It no longer looked like an object taken from a disgraced employee. Under the pale light, the worn plastic carried scratches from years of summer shifts, emergency drills, and children who had needed an adult to stay calm before they could. "Fix the records," he said. "Keep the pool open. That's enough for tonight." It was not the end of the matter. Over the following weeks, the independent audit found that Victor had manipulated enrollment categories, exaggerated operating costs, suppressed parent appeals, and accepted consulting fees from a development group connected to the proposed sale. He was removed from management, ordered to repay the conflicted fees, and referred for civil review. Ethan never attended the hearing. He submitted his service logs, answered questions, and returned to work when the suspension was formally erased from his file. Claire offered him the position of safety and maintenance coordinator, with better pay, clear authority, and responsibility for writing a new after-hours policy. She made the offer across the same front counter where his keys had been taken. "Not because you broke a rule for the right reason," she said. "Because you documented every decision, protected the child before yourself, and told us the truth even when parts of it made you look wrong." Ethan read the job description carefully before signing. Respect, he had learned, was not praise. It was responsibility given with open eyes. His first proposal was called 1 extra hour. It was not a secret exception and not a promise that every door would remain open without limits. Parents signed consent forms. A certified specialist remained on deck. 2 employees signed the operating log. Camera files were preserved automatically, and any child needing more time could receive it without being named in public reports or treated like a problem. The schedule had failed to remove. Noah returned as one student among many. No banner used his face. No donor introduced him as an inspiration. On his first afternoon back, he stood at the shallow lane with Dana nearby and Ethan at the safety station. He released the wall for 3 seconds, then 5. When he reached 10, he grabbed the edge and laughed in surprise. His mother covered her mouth with both hands. Ethan only nodded and reset the green kickboard. Again, Noah asked. Only if you want to.
Ido.
Lily sat beside Dana with a plastic stopwatch, allowed to count but not instruct. She took the responsibility seriously for almost 2 minutes before becoming distracted by a dragonfly near the windows. Ethan smiled. She was still 9. She did not need to become wise beyond her years simply because life had asked her father to be strong. By the following summer, the pool no longer smelled like a building waiting to be sold. Children's voices echoed beneath the rafters. Parents shared the shaded benches. The revised service logs sat in a clear case near the office, where no single manager could alter them unseen. Noah's repaired Lesson 4 card was displayed in the staff room with his last name covered. The pencil line through his first name was still faintly visible beneath the clear tape, not as evidence of shame, but as a reminder of how easily a child could begin erasing himself when adults confused speed with worth. On the final Friday of August, the extra hour ended beneath a copper-colored sunset. Claire stood by the gate while Ethan checked the depth markers and returned the orange rescue buoy to its hook. She handed him the same ring of keys Victor had once taken. There was no ceremony. Ethan closed his fingers around them, and Claire gave a small nod that carried more weight than applause. Noah and Lily walked through the gate ahead of him, arguing gently about whether 10 seconds counted as a long time underwater. Ethan waited until both children reached their parents before switching off the last row of lights. The pool settled into a deep blue stillness. Beneath the old closed sign hung a new wooden plaque. 1 extra hour, second chances. Begin here. For a moment, no one spoke. It was not the silence of people stunned by a fall from power. It was the silence of adults finally understanding that kindness needed rules strong enough to protect it, and rules needed kindness strong enough to remain human. Ethan locked the gate last, as he always did, while the security camera above him blinked red. Not as a threat now, but as a quiet witness. And in the soft click of that closing lock, dignity made no speech at all. It simply left the door ready to open again.